Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan Green. I'm the producer of the award-winning and Gold Globe-winning show NFL Basement. It is the number one show in Siberia. Do not check on that. Of course, there's been a lot of stuff that's happening in the Carolina Panthers, and I already knew I was going to make a video after we lost our 10th game, but considering that everything has gone on right now with Frank Reich firing and a lot of other shakeups, I decided this is definitely time to make a video. So, of course, on Frank Reich firing, I love the guy, but change needed to be made. I tip my hat to David Tepper. He knew when he made a mistake, and he decided to fire Frank Reich. A lot of people say like he should have let them play out the season, but there was just a lot of stuff that as a fan you see in the team, and especially after that loss to the Titans, you see the locker room because they show us the locker room sound, and a lot of players just dejected, and something needed to be changed. So I commend David Tepper on firing Frank Reich. Need to be done. Being 1-10, it's one of those things where you're like, you never expect it. I mean, coming into the season, I was like, worst off, we can be 7-10 again because I thought our offensive line would do well. I believed in Bryce Young, and I still do. But there's been a lot of stuff, especially with the injuries and all the kind of stuff, that's really culminated in us having a really bad season. 1-10 is not where I expected it to be, but still looking to the future. So continue on. A lot of people I see like I also wanted to wait and see a lot of people's opinions, just get all my feelings out there. And when they announced Chris Tabor as the interim head coach, I was completely fine with it. And I started seeing a lot of stuff circling around the internet, and I was very concerned that a lot of people aren't thinking logically about why other candidates wouldn't take the interim job. Let's take Thomas Brown for instance. Why would Thomas Brown take the interim job when he has head coaching aspirations? When you really think about it, what interim head coach has gotten head coaching experience after the fact? Like not just like in the same exact team, but after the fact. I can't think of one. So that's one thing, because especially with Thomas Brown and Israel Evero, they have really good opportunities to become head coaches elsewhere. So why would you show your hand before you have to play it? That's why I think, especially with Israel Evero last year, the Broncos, he didn't take that job either. So I think that's kind of setting a precedent. And Chris Tabor's already said he doesn't really want to be head coach in the future reference. And being a special teams coordinator, everybody on that team because you have to work with everybody on the team. So it just makes sense. Now, some people are saying, why not Jim Caldwell? That I don't really know. That part was like, okay, there's that too, but I'm still okay with Chris Tabor. The other two, like Thomas Brown and Israel Evero, it makes no sense why they would take interim head coaching jobs when they have head coaching aspirations. The David Tepper press conference, that one was wild. He was dodging questions, and like as much as I want to try to commend David Tepper for some of the stuff that he says, he has two talking points that he always wants to bring up. He wants to bring up the soccer team, and he wants to bring up that he brought music back to Charlotte. In anything that he says, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't answer like some of the questions that he's been asked. He tries to bring that in of like, what I've done for the Carolina Panthers. Okay, but you're not answering the question that someone's asked you. That's the thing that kind of takes me off a little bit with David Tepper, is that he'll try to like deflect blame, but at the same exact time, what do you expect the owner to do? Just he's gonna accept what he thinks he's gonna accept, but he's gonna try to deflect when he needs to deflect. And lastly, my initial thoughts going before I dive deep. There's a lot of negativity around the fan base, and deservedly so. We've had 6 straight losing seasons. Um, it's not, it's not the Carolina Panther way. Of course, we're still a young franchise, but it's been very dark times of being a Panthers fan. I've been a Panthers fan since 2011, and of course, we want something to change. And I know David Tepper wants that too. Obviously, when he sees something not working out, he's gonna cut it loose. Now he waited too long at Matt Rule, but he didn't make the right hire on Frank Reich. That's gonna make that statement right there. Um, I'll say this. I'm gonna go into it later in the video, but there's a lot of things to be positive about. I'm not gonna try to discount how you feel about this particular fan base, about where this fan base is going, but I want to try to show you the positive sides without just sugarcoating everything, because there's a lot to love about this Panthers organization and the pieces that we have so far. So next, I want to go into the potential head coaching candidates. Of course, you want to go into that first. Number one, pretty much on everyone, like every single Panther fans board is Ben Johnson. Last year, we wanted Ben Johnson super duper hard. He pulled his name out, and a lot of people were like, "Well, that's because he didn't want the job." I believe, and a lot of the sources around that is because he didn't think he was ready, and also he knew what they were building at the Lions, and he wanted to stay there. And honestly, you know, credit to him. Like the Lions have been back to back inspirational teams. You're really rooting for them, and this year they have a really good shot at making deep in the playoffs. So, I mean, he's from South Carolina. He played in North Carolina, and of course, David Tepper wanted him. So, like, I feel like David Tepper would give him the money that he needs. Hopefully, he'll back off a little bit. I'll go into that later. So, number two, Eric Bieniemy. Now, there's some caution because the fact that he wouldn't get head coaching jobs like while he was under Andy Reid. I think part of that was because they thought that Andy Reid was more of the mastermind than Eric Bieniemy. But then again, like the Bears gave Matt Nagy the head coaching opportunity, so like that kind of thing, I don't understand that aspect. But I think being away from Andy Reid, having Sam Howell and transforming Sam Howell to be the passing yards leader, and having a really good offense, despite having a terrible offensive line, I think that's one of the things that kind of elevates Eric Bieniemy to be like a legitimate head coaching candidate. That if he doesn't get a head coaching job, if it's not at the Washington, Commanders, if more than likely when Ron Rivera gets fired, then I want Eric Bieniemy as my number two option if we can't get Ben Johnson. Number three is Jira Evero. I think that he has the best option as far as like if we want to try to hire in house to just kind of like bring what we thought was a very good one of the top coaching staffs. If you want to try to like bring that along, I think trying to keep that consistency is Jira Evero. It's going to be a very easy transition. I mean, he's built the defense, and with all the injuries that we've had, it's been absolutely amazing to watch. It's the only thing that's really keeping us in games. So he's my number three option. Number four option is Frank Smith. Frank Smith is a Dolphins OC, and he's kind of like been around the league, worked with Sean Payton, worked with John Gruden, and of course, the last 2 years has been with Mike McDaniel at the Dolphins, and has really good run schemes. And honestly, the offense I think works really well with Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young and Tua have very similar arms as well. Maybe not had the strongest arm to throw deep down the field, but are very accurate and can both make stuff happen. The only thing I will say for Frank Smith's system, and I think it's just in any system that we have going on, we need speed. I'm looking at Xavier Worthy. There are some I'll talk about later in the season about like actual drafts stuff but I think having a high second round pick, we can get a really good wide receiver in a very stacked wide receiver draft class. And then my fifth one is Mike McDaniel. Not Mike McDaniel, sorry. Mike McDonald, sorry. He's the defensive coordinator at the Ravens. He's a very young defensive mind. Has really transformed that Ravens defense. I think they're like number two in the NFL right now. He's one of those people that like if we want to go young, but for some reason, uh, David Tepper's like, well, I went after an offensive guy. I want to go over a defensive guy now. Then he's the guy that I would like if we're not going to Israel Evero, because just to keep that defense as good and then hopefully be able to build up that offense with maybe a strong offensive mind that we can get as offensive coordinator. So those are my potential head coaches that I might want. Now I want to go with free agents coming up because, of course, a lot of things aren't really going well right now. There's a lot of people who are like, do I want to stay? Do I want to leave? Stuff like that. I'm going to go through the free agents that we have coming up this offseason and whether I think we should keep them for the long haul because this is going to be a rebuild. I'm expecting hopefully by 2025 to be good. But who should we keep for the long haul? Number one on the list, Frankie Louvu. Obviously, leader. Great pickup by Scott Fitterer about 2 or 3 years ago. And with the cap space that we have, we can be able to afford to pay him. So I'm really happy about that. I think we'll keep him. Obviously, leader of the defense, got to keep him. Number two, Brian Burns. I definitely want to keep him, of course. Like a lot of people don't look at the sacks, and that's not just showing everything that Brian Burns does for this defense. Um, I'll say this: it depends on the money that he's asking for. But If we can keep him, I want to keep him. If we don't, tag and try to get as much as you can for him. If he just walks, then Fit's gone. I'm I'm iffy on Fit right now, on Scott Fitter right now, our GM. But if he's able to retain Brian Burns and pay him, then I understand why he didn't trade him. But if he tries to trade him and trade him for less, or he doesn't get anything at all from Brian Burns, then he's dead to me. Because if you know that you're not going to repay him, then why keep him around and why get him for nothing? So, number three, Camus Grugier Hill. He's a linebacker. Great pickup from Scott Federer. He's basically been our replacement for Shaq Thompson after he got injured. Has been really solid. If we can bring him back, I would love that experience also in the linebacking core. So in case something else happens, I don't want us to just draft a linebacker and hope that he develops. I want something solid, and I believe that Kamu Grugier Hill is one of those. Number four is JJ Jansen. Obviously, our long snapper has been there since 2010, and honestly, as long as he doesn't retire, we're going to retain him. I'm pretty confident with that. Number five, Troy Hill. Troy Hill is a little bit up there in age, but honestly, he's been playing really good. I think that kind of helps with him being in Ejiro Evero system, like he's been in that system before when he was at the Rams. So that kind of helps. So if we keep Ejiro, then it makes so much more sense to keep him. If we don't, it depends on what scheme comes in. But I feel like Troy Hill would be a good idea to keep for like a 1 year deal. Number six, Raheem Blackshear. Raheem Blackshear, I love Raheem Blackshear. Very speedy wide receiver, very speedy running back that we have, who could potentially play wide receiver. I don't know, but also he's another returner as well. And it just depends on where they want to go in the draft. If they want to pick up a speedy running back and go younger, that's fine. But as it stands, Raheem Blackshear, I would think that we can just get him for kind of cheap as well. Be that third running back and the returner that we need and that spark that we need as well. Number seven, LeBron Ray. So he's been kind of serviceable, and I think he'll be a cheap option, and that's the reason why I was like, I think we should keep him because you need that rotation, you need the stability, and he's still young enough that like I think he can develop even more. So I think LeBron Ray keeping him is going to be a good option. Next is Yetur Gross-Matos. Now, initially, to begin the year, I would have said don't sign him. But he's made really good strides this year in this system. So it depends on how much he's asking for. If he's not asking for that much, if it's like a 3 to 4 million kind of deal, like per year deal, then yeah, I mean, I think he has a lot of potential. He had a lot of potential when he got drafted, but in this scheme, he's looked a lot better. So if if it's not a lot of money, then I definitely pay him. Jeremy Chen, he's very talented, but he doesn't really fit in our scheme, or he hasn't really fit in our scheme because we haven't really used him. I mean, of course, he's been injured too, but I think we might have him walk. I don't want him to walk because I think he's very talented. He's got to find a place on the defense, and if I'm gonna say probably gonna let him go. And same thing for number 10, Deion Jones. I think he's talented, a little bit too expensive though, and he's kind of getting up there in age. So if it's for like a 2 million kind of ordeal, then maybe bring back Deion Jones and then you can decide between Camo Grugier Hill. But I would prefer Camo Grugier Hill and just let Deion Jones go about his way. Now I'm gonna go back with the things that I'm happy about, and you should be happy about too. If you're a Panthers fan, or if you're like a casual NFL fan who just watching this video because you're wondering what a Panthers fan thinks about his team and all the things that's going on. So these are things I'm happy about. Number one, Bryce Young. I love Bryce Young, and regardless of what you think, if you think he's like so overrated in college and we should never picked him and they were going to set back, we're going to set back a generation that the Panthers never going to be good because we trade up to get Bryce Young. That's fine. That's your opinion. In my opinion, I think it's a terrible situation that he went in and that he has shown promise as well during games. If you watch the game, you've seen promise within him as well. But if he gets the right guy, his floor is a lot higher than other people that we could have possibly gotten. In my opinion, he has 4.5 more years on his contract, and you can build around him. If you get the right guy, I think it'll be the difference in whether Bryce can rise above, and I think he can. He obviously has shown that he can take a hit A lot of people were docking him for like not being able to take a hit. He can take a hit. He's been one of the most sacked quarterbacks in this league so far, and he's only been out for one game, and he played a whole entire half while he was injured as well. He's a tough kid. I love him I love him to death. Number two, young talent. We have like regardless of what you think, when they're some of them are injury prone, but when they're not injured, they are some of the best players. J.C. Horn, top 10 cornerback when he's healthy. Unfortunately, he hasn't been healthy, so he hasn't really been able to prove that. But when he's been on the field, he can shut down anybody receiver. You look back at like any game that he's played, he has shut down every single wide receiver he's gone up against. That's the thing, and I think that sucks for Scott Fitterer too because he drafted him ahead of uh, Patrick Surtain, and I love Surtain as well. But if J.C. Horn hadn't been keep on getting hurt, this would have looked a lot better pick. And honestly, I think that if he is able to stay healthy, then we have our shutdown corner for the next 10 years. Next, Ikem Ekwonu. Like, I know he's had a really sophomore slump, but that end of that rookie year, the last 10 games, he showed that he can be a really good left tackle. I think some of that has to do with the scheme. So it'll be interesting to see how he does next year or even like after, Frank Rex firing. I think he struggles with speed rushers, which that's something that technique can kind of help with. And sometimes he just relies on athleticism, and that doesn't always help. I think it's fixable. He's a really great. He's has really great potential, and a very talented young guy. Bryce Young, I've always talked about him too, but young talent under contract. Derek Brown. Derek Brown has having an absolutely amazing year. I think that with him, his ceiling can go even higher if we can get someone to be like a running mate in the middle with him. You get that, get him some one on ones, absolutely dominating. And then I can just name off a few. Jonathan Mingo has potential. Chuba Hubbard has done well this last year, and of course, I've already talked about Brian Burns. Now, third, we have over 50 million in cap space. So not only can we pay Brian Burns, we can pay Frankie Luvu, but we can bring in some other pieces that might be able to fill out this roster. You know, try to make it through year one, and then by year two, you have that first round pick again. If you want to make a trade for somebody, you can, or you can go with the draft capital that you have, and go on your merry way. But we have the cap space. We're not strapped for cash, and so that's something to be happy about. Is that you can fix some of the problems that you have. Number four, our division is trash. Absolute garbage. There's potential that we can have four new head coaches in the NFC South. If every single one of the head coaches goes and has a losing season, I can see them all being gone. Dennis Allen, Saints don't like him. Arthur Smith, Falcons don't like him. Todd Bowles, Buccaneers definitely don't like him. It's one of those things where, like, because our division is so garbage, I can see people wanting to come here. And that comes to number five. A lot of people are looking at our situation as like, oh, we fired two head coaches back to back years. Our owner is incompetent, yada, 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 yada. Some of that might be true. But you know what? You can look back in the past, you can see other situations, and you can see, like, maybe there's potential for me. Let's start with the 49ers. Jed York didn't really know what he's doing. Thought he knew what he was doing, was making some terrible decisions, and then he took a step back and he was like, hey, okay, you know what? I know how to make money. I know how to do the business side, but I don't know football. If David Tepper can take a step back and be like, hey, I'll let you do you. I'll let you make your own decisions. Someone like Ben Johnson, someone like Eric Bieniemy, someone like Ezra Evero, somebody like Frank Smith, someone like Mike McDonald can do their job. I think that could be a lot of differences in what we're seeing on the field. I think that you're not going to have the pressure of the owner. I think you'll be able to build your own team. And honestly, that's you've seen with the 49ers of where they were after the whole or after the Harbaugh situation and those Chip Kelly and I don't even remember what the offensive line coach that became their head coach's years. Like those were awful years because Jed Jordan didn't know what he was doing. But then he decided, hey, you know what? I'm gonna let the football people do football things, and I'll sit in the background, and that's what he did, and it made all the difference in the world. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have done their thing and build that program into something very respectable. And lastly, with the Texans. Like, it was just last year that we were talking. A lot of people were talking about how like this is a terrible situation. No one should want to come here. Who wants to come to this awful organization where like they fired head coaches back to back years, and it's just there's a terrible roster. I wasn't saying that because obviously I saw a lot of the talent on their roster. And you bring in a guy like D'Amico Ryans, you bring in the right guy, it can make all the difference in the world. You already have your QB. All you gotta do is bring in the right guy. That's something that I'm very positive about because I'm like, I can see us making that trajectory. I can see us having a positive future because I'm not trying to be bogged down by all the negativity. I know negativity sells. I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, well, you're just, your head's in the clouds. You're not seeing the full picture." I'm being optimistic, but I'm being optimistic with having situations that are very similar to our own and seeing the positives in that too. So I just wanted to, kind of give an update of my view on the Panthers. What I see possibly happening in the rest of the season. I think we can see some improvement. Maybe pick up a couple of wins. I think Bryce Young might be able to develop even more. And I'm hopeful for the Panthers. I think that there's a lot of doom and gloom. There's a lot of optimism to be seen, as well as a lot of potential. And we'll see. I hope you enjoy the video. If you like this format, just let me know. I might make more format like this kind of videos. And see you soon.